Great, thank you. All right, well, once again, thank you, everyone. I'm here in London. Wherever you are, I hope you are keeping safe and well. You know, it's been a bit of a crazy year. It's been a very busy year for us at Mirantis, so we wanted to take some time today to just spend a little while going through some of the recent developments here at Mirantis, some of the things we're doing to simplify Kubernetes and work well in the developer use case as well, and kind of streamline the path to getting apps in production. So just a note on our agenda. So we're going to spend a little time first, just a bit of orientation, some updates we've got. We've moved a few things around, so I just want to make sure all of my references going forward make sense. So I'm just going to take a few minutes on that. And then we're going to move ahead and we'll talk a little bit about working with Kubernetes using a graphic user interface, working with Lens, and some of why that's useful. Maybe just show a little bit of that working as well, make sure you can understand why it's going to be so useful for people going forward. We've actually made some recent announcements about that we're ready to share with you today. Later on, we're going to talk a little bit about the new Container Cloud suite, the cloud native platform from us that we are that brings new capabilities around the provisioning and lifecycle management of Kubernetes. So we'll be able to run through some of the challenges that people are facing there, and also demo some of that working. Then we have one more thing to talk about, another recent announcement in our open source space, and then we will build in time for Q&A. So make sure if you're joining us today and you're using the BrightTalk platform, there is a space at the bottom for you to ask questions. We've got people helping me look at that, and we'll make sure when we get to the end there, we'll be able to field a few of those. So any questions as I go along, use the box. We'll make sure we circle back and deal with them for you. Okay. So I'm going to begin with a few updates. Very recently, we've actually moved a few things around at Mirantis, and we started to change a few names of our products. Now, I know that a few people on the line here today may be already existing Docker Enterprise customers from Mirantis, right? So, you know, we've been changing our product line to form part of a much broader cloud native platform. So I'm going to use some different names today than you may be used to hearing, and I just wanted to make sure that we are all kind of on the same page when I'm making references here. So the first one I want to talk about is MKE. MKE stands, of course, for Mirantis Kubernetes Engine, and that is our Kubernetes platform, our certified and secure Kubernetes platform. And this takes the place of the Docker Enterprise Universal Control Plane in our suite of products. So going forward now, things are going to be singularly Mirantis branded, and you're still getting all of that great technology that's in there right now. That's going to continue to evolve. We are going to continue to include and evolve our Docker Swarm support in there as well. But just in order to kind of align everything under the Mirantis brand now, we're now calling this aspect of our platform the Mirantis Kubernetes Engine, MKE. Also, if you're a Docker Enterprise customer, you will be hopefully making good use of Docker Trusted Registry, our secure registry for handling container images. Now, moving forward as well, this is not going to be just about container images. We're going to also look at other artifacts that can take part of that, and that now becomes Mirantis Secure Registry as part of our stack. So again, if you're seeing these names here today and you're used to hearing Docker Enterprise Universal Control Plane, UCP, or Docker Enterprise Docker Trusted Registry, DTR, then these are going to be the names we're going to be using going forward. So you're going to see more of this from us, and we have exciting roadmaps for every aspect of this. But these components now form part of the Mirantis Cloud Native platform. So you'll probably know Mirantis has a long history as a trusted distribution and managed services vendor in the infrastructure as a service space. So long history in managing complex environments, tens of thousands of systems, complex open source software, but also vendoring it in a way which is very cost efficient, very well supported over a long period. But also innovating in that space as well. And that's exactly what's been happening in the last year here at Mirantis. So you may be familiar with our OpenStack distribution. That has been worked on this year to actually run those components cloud native as containers. So now that that too has a different name. But this is all now fitting together as an infrastructure as a service platform with container platform in service of container platform capabilities as well. So this brings together several components that can run on any infrastructure platform, so bare metal and private cloud and public cloud. You can work with your choice of operating system. So if you have incumbents, you have standards where you are, you can be continuing to make use of them without having to deviate if you do not need to, or if you can't for supportability reasons. And then on top of that, now we can deploy Kubernetes really is the bedrock of the platforms that run on top, offering the infrastructure as a service and the container services as well. So these come together with software-defined storage. Of course, the infrastructure as a service provides things like networking and load balancing capabilities. We bring all of that together in terms of a view of with the logging and monitoring capabilities in our Stacklight, which is an EFK stack, bringing together all the data points from across the platforms. Running MKE now as the Kubernetes and Swarm distribution, which you can take your choice of which orchestrators you'd like to use. Working with the secure registry and managing all of this with our new Container Cloud product, which is bringing together lifecycle management and auth as well into a single place. We're going to come back to this in a moment, but just for orientation now, this is the new branding for it, but it's also the way that these new products fit into our existing products as well and complement them to give a modern responsive stack for delivering cloud native applications. So we at Mirantis as well, I mean, I actually came from Docker Enterprise as well, which was brought into the Mirantis family last year. Now we're moving forward as well with leaning much more into the developer space as well, kind of trying to draw the, reduce the distance and reduce the friction for developers wanting to get access to cloud native technology and very responsive infrastructure for delivering their applications. And we know that operators and developers have different concerns, but we're basically looking at things from both of these angles and bringing them together in our product set. So we've made some nice announcements, big announcements recently. We've actually got really aggressive roadmaps throughout the rest of this year and next, very rapid releases in all of our product lines. And we're going to be seeing much more of these things come closer together. But today I want to start off by talking about the developer experience for Kubernetes. I'm someone who's been using sort of Kubernetes since it started to sort of really gain traction in 2016, 2017. And there's a lot of big tool chain associated with all of that, but we're going to bring some technology here to really complement that, or not take place of it, but really complement that. So let me just start by talking about the experience of Kubernetes and working with it as a developer or as an operator on the CLI. So if you're working now today with Kubernetes, you'll be using the kubectl command. Now, don't pick me up on the pronunciation there. I know that there's different camps about that, but kubectl is what I'm calling it today. It's basically the CLI API client for the Kubernetes API server. So you'll be issuing commands here with different verbs, different objects that you want to be working with, and now you get the results there in your console. Okay, so you can interact in the terminal just with issuing commands in order to create and modify objects just with each interactive command, or you can apply YAML, which is obviously as a more declarative syntax for or a declarative file descriptor, which is going to describe your objects as you want them to be, and you can leave the API server in many cases to make that real. Now, Kubernetes itself has a bit of a reputation for having a steep learning curve. I mean, arguably, it's a platform for microservices, which is itself a microservice application. So there are lots of, there is a steep learning curve associated with it. It's got a reputation for that, but no one should be discouraged from that. I think really, working with many of the simpler use cases just to understand how things work. I think everyone should be using this, whether or not I talk about anything that can complement that. Everyone should really be looking at kubectl because it really helps people sort of understand how Kubernetes is put together, how those objects interact, and how applications are constructed on it. But it's not for the faint of heart, like I said. So there is way more, space within the command set than I use every day. I probably use a small subset of those on a regular basis. But there are commands, and then there are subcommands, and there are sub-subcommands, and those can have flags. And between all of those things, and between that and also the pace of innovation that's happening with every release, there could be changes, there can be new flags and new capabilities added every release. So it becomes a job in its own right to master this stuff. Now, that's great if you're someone who's going to be working with this all the time, but if you're not, if you're someone who maybe interacts with it less frequently, someone who is just getting to know it, it can feel like a barrier to entry. But like I said, it's worth sticking with this stuff. There is just so much out there in terms of learning material and examples that this is the reference implementation of how to interact with the Kubernetes API. So you'll be using it to work with API resources. There's a ton of them, of course, that make up the building blocks that you can use to make your applications, but also the building blocks of Kubernetes itself. And when you do that, those objects can live in one place, or they can live in another place. They can live in one cluster. They can live in another. Like I said, it's an API client. So really, you're issuing commands to one API server or another, and then within that, objects will live, or even within a Kubernetes cluster, there'll be multiple logical namespaces in which different objects can live. And that means that at any given time, you might be saying, well, I'm going to create this instance on this cluster or in this namespace. And then again, you'll be issuing a similar command to do another, create another set of objects in another namespace. And this in itself can become a bit of a job to kind of to keep track of, right? If you're just basically saying, get this, get that. Am I pointing at the right thing? Am I looking at what I'm expecting to see? So there's lots of really nice optimizations that people have, really worked on to scratch their own itch and make life a bit easier for people. So you'll see things like CLI plugins, bash completion, utilities that help people kind of simplify working with the kubectl CLI. There'll be definitely aliases. Definitely recommend aliases for the you see there on the right. I'm using K for kubectl. That's just me saving keystrokes, and then things like prompt decoration that kind of say, look, you are here when you're taking this action. But that, again, getting things right in your working environment is very important. It's a job in itself, right? And I think arriving at a point where using it is super convenient itself can take some time as well. But when you're working with this, you're basically taking CRUD operations, and I think CRUD is a sort of a well-known term if you're in the work of creating or maintaining APIs, but you're going to be in this work of first creating objects. So I'm going to create a deployment. I'm going to just maybe interactively run a single pod or a deployment. These are the different sort of verbs or the different subcommands that you can use to make these create actions happen. And then once you've done that, you might just say, you can see there on the right, it's just saying, hey, I've created that. I'm going to that's it. That's all you get back. I've accepted the task, if you like. And then you have to then dig into the API again and say, well, let's go and read that. Let's go and read those particular objects again to find their status. Are they healthy? Are they up and running? Are they pending, for example? And so we get the subcommands like get and describe and logs that you can use to go and dig this out. And then if you want to make changes further down the line, you can interactively do that. You can edit a resource where it gives you the YAML to go and work with. You can use scale to alter the size of the number of replicas in a deployment, and you can apply YAML again. So again, this is different ways in which you can update again, but in order to see the result, again, you're going to be reading it. And of course, you can just destroy resources when you're done. You can destroy any of those objects you've created. But in the example below there, you can see with all the kubectl commands, I guess my point here that I want to underscore is like, you'll do something and then you'll go and find out, has it been deployed? And then you'll go and see, then you're going to inspect it to go and look at its health, right? Or you're going, especially when you're trying to troubleshoot something, you'll be feeling around each of these objects to kind of trace the issue back through perhaps all the interdependent components in your application. And if you combine that with some of the complexity that comes from working across multiple locations, multiple namespaces, etc., it's easy. It's just really easy to make mistakes. I do it all the time. So my point here is really you're sort of asking questions to ask questions to get the answers, and that has some drawbacks. So first of all, you just want to have maybe some situational awareness, right? Like, where am I now in my application? What am I actually looking at? Is this a healthy application I'm looking at, right? Or I've just issued a change. Is that going well? Is that not going well? Okay, and the time taken to actually find that out, matters. Like I said before, this is, Kubernetes can have a high barrier to entry to adoption, especially if it's not your sole job, if you're not a platform engineer, or if you're not someone who's been working in this natively for a long time. If you're somebody who's trying to promote the use of containers and all the goodness that can bring in your organization, you kind of want to make sure that this is a pleasant experience, one that is a bit more forgiving maybe, and one that people feel like they can learn and get productive without kind of without finding the experience unpleasant. And it's not just kubectl, by the way, of course. There's so many, I mentioned some kind of convenience utilities for the shell there to kind of make an individual's experience of the commands easier. But there's a lot more than that, of course, right? There's surrounding ecosystem technologies. So you may find that, some software that you want to use has its own deployment tools, right? Or you might have its own CLI, which wraps around Kubernetes to make that happen. Some ISV tools you might want to work with as well. Might also be needed to get a full picture of what's actually going on. And that just, again, compounds the complexity. And again, this can make to a difficult sort of user experience. And the idea really is fundamentally, this is about productivity and speed. Like the whole time I've been working with containers and talking to customers about containers, it is about achieving results with productivity. It is about achieving high speed in getting things done. So we want to kind of take some of the user experience pain away from all of that to make sure that people can get to their answers quickly. And in particular, when people are trying to prove out applications or resolve problems with them. I mean, there's lots of issues that can happen in an application. You want to be able to surf that API and get to the answers quickly, unblock those issues, and resolve those outages. So this is where Lens comes in. Lens has been with us now at Mirantis since we took it on in the middle of this year, and it's a fantastic tool for kind of giving you a graphical user interface for this, and I'm going to show it to you in just a second. It is pretty much the most popular desktop GUI for Kubernetes now. So it's a very present user experience. It's nice and snappy in how it works. It's highly visual and allows you to take, get a lot of the same view that you get from those interactive commands, but in one place. It is 100% free and open source. So it's all out there on GitHub. You can go and check it out. You can go and interact and join the community. I'll provide some links on that later. It's available for Mac and for Windows and for Linux, right? So multi-platform, whatever you're using, whatever you like to develop in, wherever you're working, whatever they make you use, you can install this, and it's the same software. It's a portable piece of software. So it has built-in Prometheus stats, so you can actually install a Prometheus instance so that you can actually get the metrics back without having to maintain a full stack, in particular if you're working just locally, which I'll be showing you shortly. And it has a context-aware terminal built in as well. So we're not trying to displace what the terminal can do here. We're not actually working around it either. That's a really important point here, is that if you want to just drop into the terminal at that point and then use some other third-party tool or some other some utility that's very useful, you can continue to do that. We're not trying to work or obviate around that. It does have multi-cluster management, so it'll basically hoover up. I'll show you. It will hoover up your kube configs for your system, populate the GUI, and then you can get going. And it also has native API. It makes use of the native APIs. It is basically using the same Kubernetes APIs, and this means that we're not sort of adding in extra software here, really to make our stuff work. We're not bending Kubernetes to our purposes here. Everything we're doing is using the Kubernetes native API, which means if you do something in this and then you or your colleague wants to go and check out what's happening using those CLI tools, it's going to give you the same result. It's going to be the same information. Okay, enough slides. Let's have a quick look. Okay, so I am working here on my local Windows system, so let's hope it's behaving itself today. And I've actually just started up minikube right here. So if I just run K cluster info here, by the way, K is my alias for kubectl, so I'm keeping that nice and short here. So that's running locally. Here it's a Windows 10 machine. I'm using PowerShell with the Hypershell terminal emulator. I've used Chocolatey to install minikube, and I actually have the Helm binary as well, which I installed with Chocolatey as well. So I can say, kconfig get contexts, right? So I can see what I've got, actually places where I can be addressing and people will be working with. Minikube has started up nicely and set me up to be pointing at minikube. And so now when I actually go and let's say the API resources on here is the standard set, because this is a pretty vanilla Kubernetes minikube install right now. these are all the kind of resource types that I can be working with Kube. Okay, so you can see here they've actually, they've already put in a bunch of nice abbreviations, if you like, that will work in the CLI, but there's a bunch of them, and this is what I would need to type out every time I wanted to interrogate it, if I wanted to find out what was happening. So just a simple example, I can use an abbreviation like that now, K8s, for example, right? So I've got my all of my namespaces right there. So that's nice. Let's take a look at this now through Lens. So again, pretty basic install here. I've actually already had a few clusters set up on here already, so I actually have my Mirantis demo cluster that we use for showing off MKE out in the cloud there. I'm also a Docker desktop user, of course. That's already here. So I'm just going to add another cluster right now. And it's looked in this place that I've delivered for it, and I can see I've got my minikube context right there right now. So I can add my cluster here, and it's going to make a connection to that. Meanwhile, so that's just, so we're through now. I can pop back into the settings here. You can kind of get a view of some of the basic information that's around that. While I'm here, I'm going to flip this to the minikube logo, because I like my stuff looking cute. While I'm here as well, I have permission to do this, of course, in a minikube install. So I can click install here, and it's actually going to install the Prometheus stack, and that's going to give me metrics where I'm running as well. So in just a few moments, that's going to be done. Now I might shuffle that around a little bit because that keeps things nicely in order. And so now I'm here in my home screen. This will start to populate very shortly when the metrics work completes. So I have my one node here, as you can see. This is the kind of information that you'd be retrieving with K8s nodes. I can click on any one of these now, and I get straight away all of the properties associated with it. Okay, you can see the pods running on it, etc., metadata labels, that kind of thing. Okay, and some events associated. So now that's just the nodes view, but we actually want to have a look at maybe the sort of the logical objects that Kubernetes was running here. We now just, you can see, red, amber, green. Is this healthy? What's running? Is everything okay? And so I can see this now. I can sort of surf across each of these types now. Here I have my pods, not much happening here, the built-in stuff, deployments that I might want to be kicking off, daemon stats, staple jobs, etc. Okay, you can surf between all of these. I have this is looking across all namespaces right here, right now. But as you can see, just as before, it's hoovering up all of that same information from the API about which namespaces are running, and I can flip to any of those just by clicking on an individual one, for example, like so. And the same goes for all of these, right? So I can run through different individual pods. Hopefully in a moment now, yep, we're getting just in the last minute of metrics is coming through now. But this will continue to run for as long as that minikube instance is running. We'll have information for all of that. I can now actually surf all this information. Again, nice kind of visual feedback on the health of things. And if I want to just kind of get to know the kind of information that's held on things as well. If I want to, I can actually shell right in into a particular pod. I can go and retrieve logs and others as well. Or if I want to, I can pop up the actual YAML definition of any individual object there, edit it in situ, and then save it. So definitely worth keeping in mind that this is not actually working, parallel to or providing another route into provide a different set of tooling. This is all native with that tool set. Indeed, as I said before, we have the terminal here, and this is already working in the right context. So if I flip to another one shortly, you'll be able to see I'm working in a different context there as well. So again, I got the same experience here.
Steve, just a quick question that's just come in.
Please.
One of the viewers is asking, does this also exist for ARM architecture? Example, Raspberry Pi.
I believe not at the moment. I know that it's something that we are actually quite heavily invested in ARM at the moment with some of the work we're doing in the Kubernetes space. I believe it is not. That's a question I have not been asked, so I will have to follow up on. But I believe at the moment it is only for the x86 architectures today. That's my belief. Any others from you there, Adam?
Just another question. I think you covered it. How much is this free? Is it open source?
Oh, indeed. Yes, 100% free and 100% open source, and always will be. Absolutely, yeah. So they're out there on GitHub. So you can pull from master if you want, and we're openly inviting people to test it out and look at the issues. There is some now. There is a new version upcoming as well, which I'm going to circle around and talk about in just a second.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So as you can see, all of these other areas around the different object types, different places in which we can work. We can look at events as well, different views around all of this. All of this is present here in the in this view, so I can actually move around very quickly. And if I'm working across multiple different clusters, right? So many of our customers will have different development and testing and production environments. I can now jump between each of these and get to the information real quick to kind of see an application's behavior through stages. Worth mentioning also here that we do have Helm chart support straight built in. I've actually got a couple of Helm repositories set up here, the Bitnami and the stable ones. So this is going to hopefully be kind and refresh quickly. Thank you. Cool. So I can take, let's say, WordPress 10 from Bitnami right here. I can take a good look at that. It's gonna bring up basically all of the stuff from the repo associated with that. So I can take a really good read here of how this should be working. Each of the kind of parameters I can configure around all of this. I can browse all of this, and if I want to go for it, I can. It's going to bring it up right here in the lower window here, and you'll start to see we pull the chart down, and I can make edits here. I'm working here with minikube, so I think I'll probably be changing things from load balancer to, I think it comes with the default is load balancer. I'll probably be flipping that to node port, for example, right? But and there's different versions I can surf here as well. If there's a particular one I'm interested in, I can choose which namespace this is going into. So I'll drop that into my one here. I can give the deployment a name, of course, as you would do, without that character, and then install, and then off it goes. So then that chart becomes a release. I can now start browsing my releases, and we can see the work beginning to set that up. Cool. So that's deploying now, and I think you'll see each of the individual components coming up. There's notes associated as well for post-install, things like that we can set up. So that was just a little view there of Lens. Before I run away, I think you might want to see just a more fully fledged environment. This is our MKE install that we use for demos here at Mirantis, and this is now pinging this. It's now going to a remote deployment out in our OpenStack lab, and this is going to be a much larger scale. You can see we've got many more nodes here, many more namespaces, of course, because we share this as a team. So I can make sure I can see the whole view or just my individual view. So again, out of the minikube kind of single host context now, something much bigger, much more interesting.
Great. Whilst that's loading, Steve, there's several more questions here coming through. So one of the quick ones here is do you know what the memory/CPU requirements are?
They're pretty calm. Should we do this live and find out? Here we go. Let's take a look. I am opening up my apps. Pretty good. There you go. Nothing up my sleeve. It's 116 meg right there. So I would say that's pretty good. Pretty good on the power usage as well. So I hope that answers your question. 113, 116 changes every second, but yeah, it's pretty friendly. I mean, and that's with a couple of things open. After all, it is just retrieving things from the API and presenting that. It's not particularly intensive in that way. Thanks for that question.
Yeah, no worries. And if you do a search for Lens Kubernetes, you'll find the page on this, and there's an installation guide, and there's also a systems requirement link on there. So I definitely encourage you to go and have a look at that. And then one more question. It says, "Hi, Steve. Can you show how you can jump to a different cluster and where we can configure this if this is quick to show?"
Oh yeah, I kind of did that. So I don't have all of mine up and running at the moment. I do have one up in AWS. So I have Docker Desktop. I'm conserving system resources, so I'm being mindful of how many local Kubernetes clusters I'm running. But yeah, that's basically this is the cluster view down the side. Each of these can be picked up. So once you have your kube configs, you can basically choose which ones you want to use. And then they will pop up as their own icons here. I flipped the icons to being, something friendly. I went and got those images to do that. But after that, it's just a matter of moving back and forth like so. So yeah, I think I've been through the brief setup and then just surfing between the two there. Hope that answers your question.
That's
right.
Great. Thank you.
Onward. Cool. Okay, we're back. So one piece of news out of this, I think, is very cool. Okay, I think this is really going to improve the usefulness in a really big way, and through that, expand the use of Lens in the community. There'll be much more people interested in this as a result. So what's been added in our most recent announcement, this was at KubeCon last week, is extension support. So in much the same way, Firefox, Chrome, etc., has an extension API. This has been added into Lens now. So this version is going to ship in the next couple of weeks. And here on screen now, you can see one of our debuting extensions that we did with the guys at Aquasec. Okay, so this is now part of giving them this is their Starboard integration, so they can see the CVEs and vulnerabilities associated with a particular deployment. So just wanted to kind of show you this. This stuff is moving very quickly, and we'll have a new version 4, in the coming weeks. And if you download Lens today, it is completely self-updating as well in that way. You come in, you log in just like Visual Studio Code or something, or Chrome, says, hello, there's a new update available. Would you like to download it? Yes, please. Restart it, and you're off to the races. Okay, moving swiftly on. So, Mirantis Container Cloud. This is another one of our recent announcements we're really excited about, and the product of a lot of engineering work throughout this year, bringing the the container UCP now MKE capabilities from Docker Enterprise into Mirantis's great history of handling and sort of marshalling infrastructure. That's the word I was reaching for. Cool. So since I've been involved with working with container platforms, selling container platforms, and watching the industry, I think we've seen rapid kind of evolution, I suppose. But you can see how adoption has kind of found new problems to solve, and and how that's actually had a really important impact on the surrounding technologies, or the technologies used to build it. So at the beginning, at the very beginning, people were very and if we're talking about the evolution of a single user, for example, making use of containers, they may just start with a single host. Okay, they may just start with a single host, start some containers in that, use that for development purposes, or just use that to start some containers, perhaps with Docker Compose, something like that. We still see that absolutely all the time. That is how people just kind of cut their teeth on this stuff. And at a small scale, that's absolutely fine. But then we move into different concerns. If you're working with microservices applications, if you want to kind of have something, some machine intelligence looking after the health and the status of your applications over time, you start to move to a cluster. Then that gains popularity, or you have different staging environments, different SLAs, different locations. You'll have multiple clusters. And of course, things are sort of moving towards a sort of managed service as people kind of realize the benefits of containers as something that can be very much standardized as a sort of platform. And some of the trends that have been happening alongside this, I've certainly seen, are just the decreasing relevance of hosts, OSs and distributions, right? So there used to be some really strong kind of footholds for operating systems out there in the market. And really, this is becoming perhaps less important, because that operating system, there's less of the core utilities that you're relying on now that more of it resides up in the container. So that's certainly a trend that's been seen over time. And more and more people are trying to make their platforms kind of more flexible, more automated, being able to get to it on demand. So people can spin up clusters, spin up new infrastructure the moment they need it, and then put it away and dispose of it just as quickly for reasons of efficiency and cost. And another trend really we see is just there being more clusters, more venues as well, right? So some of our what's normal for us, I think, as at Mirantis, is that if you're talking about a number of MKE clusters in a customer, something between 2 and 5 is kind of normal, or at least at the very beginning. But that can grow very quickly over time for lots of different reasons. As I said, different SLAs, different security standards, different locations, and more. And so there's a long tail of customers, of Mirantis customers, that have tens of clusters, over 100 clusters, for example. And then the platform maintenance becomes a job in its own right. So we want to kind of simplify that work. Some people out there have already been investing heavily in kind of trying to fix this for themselves as well, because if you're a small number of platform engineers trying to marshal large amounts of infrastructure, again, you're trying to automate your way out of this. And so the challenges people are facing include things like the platform engineers trying to produce infrastructure that people can consume at the rate that they're asking for it. And certainly, in my work at Mirantis, I work with a lot of people under a lot of pressure to deliver there. There's a lot of work invested in automating what is basically sort of a increasingly de facto standardized stack up to a point. So, there's lots of tools you can be working. There's lots of scripting and automation you can do. There's lots of different tools that you can use to automate infrastructure, of course. But really, what we're aiming for is that Kubernetes dial tone, and lots of people basically working in parallel in different ways to achieve the same result. This is really, with the managed services experience and the cloud-like experience that we're really reaching for. That is something which is, hopefully freeing up time now, so people can go and work on what makes their infrastructure more different. It's a challenge to integrate and centralize logging, monitoring, and analytics. So when you have all of these clusters, can you actually onboard them in a way and collect the right information from them in a way that gives you visibility without having to make you look in lots of different places? And are you sort of managing all of those clusters in a way which looks after security for them, looks after the versions of them, making sure that they, that there isn't a kind of a sprawl of infrastructure, because once it becomes easy and programmatic to go and create, you can have that kind of experience of there being just more of it than you need, or inefficient use. And yeah, in general as well, just maintaining standards, right? So working across different locations, you may be working in private and public clouds, across different business units. You may want to be enforcing standards across all of these things. These are the kind of challenges we're trying to look very closely at with Container Cloud. So Mirantis Container Cloud, I'll try to be nice and quick on this. This is really our overarching manager of managers, if you like, for lifecycle management and centralized management of MKE clusters. And this can be done over lots. What is really cool about this, we can do this across lots of different infrastructure, including public cloud, including private cloud, including bare metal. So we can, we're not prescriptive. We're providing still lots of flexibility and choice in how Kubernetes is deployed and how it is integrated, and we aim to make that as easy as possible. We're also providing automated updates as well, I think, which is really important, because we are shipping new, basically, streams of new software in our channels just every few weeks. We also have centralized operations, right? So I can create clusters, I can observe them, look at their I can look at their logging monitoring. I can actually look at the authorization service as well, so centralizing auth across multiple clusters in one place using Container Cloud. So this is something we've been really excited about and working out all year. For those of you interested in kind of the implementation, okay, the short version of this slide goes like this. If you're working with Container Cloud today, you can either fully manage an installation of MKE, or you can take an existing MKE cluster and attach it. Attaching it allows us to still monitor it and secure it, but it doesn't look after its whole life cycle from the host upwards. A managed cluster will actually give us the ability to install the operating system, look after its updates, create the MKE cluster, install the MKE cluster software, and onboard it into the management cluster as well. All of this will be forwarded up into a centralized management cluster, which is itself, of course, a Kubernetes cluster. And actually, for those of you kind of interested in more of the detail here, we're working with the cluster API, and the components of these clusters are really custom Kubernetes resources that we're creating there is actually being used to trigger and invoke and change Kubernetes infrastructure underneath. Anything else on this? So hopefully you can see things like we have the lifecycle management agent here, which would be working for handling changes in lifecycle events inside the cluster as well. And you can see CRDs here is the custom resource definitions as well for a managed Kubernetes cluster and the objects we're looking after as part of Container Cloud. All of these centralized things here, I think you'll probably, so we have, of course, a UI associated with this. Helm will be familiar with people native to Kubernetes, but it's really handling sort of package management, I suppose, of cloud native applications. Bare metal as a service using the OpenStack Ironics project. We also have making use of the cluster API for controlling things, and the presence, of course, of Stacklight for giving us the logging, monitoring, and analytics of the underlying platform. Only other point I think to take away on this slide is that this is a provider-driven model. So we basically most of these components are remaining the same, but we have a different provider for each of the underlying infrastructure types. So if I move ahead a little now, in the interest of time, let me refresh this, make sure it's going to behave itself. Okay, I'm here in Container Cloud right now, and hopefully this is good for you watching on smaller screens. Let me beef that up a little bit for you. So here in Container Cloud, I'm working in a project. A project really actually has a mapping to a Kubernetes namespace in this management cluster. And you can see here down the side, we have lots of different projects we could be using. I can actually work natively if I want to have API access to this cluster, work with a Kubernetes config for the Container Cloud management cluster. Hope that makes sense. And then we can actually look at different clusters in these projects and manage some of the things that it depends on. The releases, they're coming thick and fast. We're going to be doing sort of 3 or 6 weekly releases of Container Cloud and underlying MKE as well. So we can choose any one of these when we want to make a deployment. We'll need things like SSH keys and credentials to clouds in order to basically broker access to infrastructure and to take action. Let's actually just kick off a cluster build right now. So I can go ahead and create a cluster. I can say CC demo, something like that right now. And right now I've only got the AWS. So I am actually in a Container Cloud cluster right now, but I have the only provider which is available right now in this cluster is AWS. We also have bare metal and OpenStack, as I mentioned, and we're also working in technical preview with VMware as well today. So we can do these exact kind of actions on VMware infrastructure as well. Okay, so that's the only basic requirements in terms of information taken from me. I want to select a region, probably one a bit closer to me. Let's choose that one. That's probably the closest. And then in Kubernetes, if I want to be avoiding, for example, if I was working in a particular subnet range that I wanted to avoid a clash with, I can modify these things here, and then give it some alerting and monitoring parameters as well.
Quick question here, Steve.
Yeah, shoot.
Asking, how do we handle node auto-scaling in a bare metal situation?
Node auto-scaling for bare metal isn't yet in the platform. So we do want to, there is node auto-scaling possible in public clouds, of course, but this is not yet a supported aspect of this. It is, this is our sort of not quite 1.0, of course, because we've streamed a couple of sets of updates down now, but this is delivering the lifecycle management and cluster capabilities across all of those target platforms, as I mentioned. But node auto-scaling, I can't even say it. Node auto-scaling on bare metal isn't yet possible in this platform. Something we can work on though. Thanks for the question.
Thank you.
Cool. So I'm just going to deploy a minimum footprint here. I can see the time moving quite quickly. So I can go and create a 3 manager. That's sort of the basic HA deployment. And it's going to go and pick up all of the different instance types we can run in a cloud. That's the default. And it's also gone and picked up the Ubuntu AMI for that region I'm working in. Okay. So I can hit fire on that, hit create. And that's going to get going. Now, it's probably not going to finish before we're done speaking today. So let me just quickly zoom on back. We can see actually when we want to the events associated with that deployment as well. So you can see new subnets, new gateways, new VPCs, etc., being created to facilitate that new cluster. So that's all cool. Meanwhile, meantime, we have this management cluster here. We can at any point as well just go and check out the cluster info for that and the individual components, of course, that have been deployed, for example, the EFK stack. So I took the liberty of opening that up now in another cluster here. Let me refresh that. It's been sitting there a little while. And I thought it wouldn't make me do it, but I've got to sign back in. That's me using the centralized Keycloak auth there that's provided for the management cluster and all child clusters. And here we can see we have all the dashboards that we need to get kind of a full historical view of our cluster throughout time, right? So rather than just having a point in time view, this is now going to be collecting it centrally across all of our clusters as well. So we can take a really a good view of that across all. Okay. So that's it for Grafana there and Kibana here. Okay, and when this is done, we would have a UCP URL delivered to us as well. Should be here at the bottom, and I can go and consume that. Go and log in, take my Kubernetes kubeconfig file, drop it into Lens, and begin straight away. That's which is real nice. So that's how. This on AWS, you could expect to take sort of tens of minutes really to get to the result, depending on scale. But then you're up and running. Okay, so this is if you've been in the business now, if you're someone who normally has to wait a lot of time for kind of lots of teams to work together to get the result on your own infrastructure, this is something you could be consuming right now. Okay, look at the time. I will jump on back to my slides. I hope that helped illustrate some of what we can do there. Okay, so just wanted to circle back on this. So what I've shown you here, obviously MKE was featuring as the bedrock of all of those kind of clusters I was showing you there. Not minikube, of course, but the one that we were using for Container Cloud and the child ones that we were creating. The Container Cloud was really centerpiece there, but we were making use. I mean, we can actually deploy. And we're working with sort of Stacklight there as well to look at the logging and monitoring. So that becomes readily integrated into any infrastructure we create with this platform. So hopefully this is tying together some of these things, and hopefully some of these new names are taking hold today. All right, so what now? If you like Lens, the good news, like I said, it's free. You should go and get it. It's K8slens.dev. Okay, so that's the website for the project. There are generated docs as well, so you can go and visit them. You can go and pick particular branches as well. The version 4 beta stuff is in there right now too. And there is a community around this as well, so you can jump on the Slack. Would love people to find issues. Try it on your Raspberry Pi. I might do that after this. But then, log any issues you kind of that you hit, and it's very, very actively being developed right now. So yeah, check it out, and also just look out for more of those extensions coming. And if you're a dab hand with JavaScript, then maybe work something up yourself. You could make something really useful for the community. On the Container Cloud piece, you just need to go to mirantis.com. So nice and easy there. We put it right in your way when you come to the website to try it out, download it, go find the docs. Good news is you can try it for free. If you are a Docker Enterprise or MKE user now, you can use it for free with limited support. So you can actually try it out on the clusters you already have. And if you want to take it, much further than that, then you can adopt full support, etc. from us. And then last of all, sorry, that's another link for Lens there, so you can help with that. So last slide here, just one more thing, Steve Jobs style. Just one more thing is that something you may have read about in the last week is K0s. And K0s, I just wanted to point you out as being a really neat and new announcement from us. It's a new Kubernetes distribution, which as of the last 48 hours, I think has been certified from the CNCF, is a sort of a very minimal and meant to be kind of very low friction Kubernetes, where we're providing all of the underlying requirements for Kube, right down to like containerd underlying libraries, etc. So it's kind of zero prerequisites, and it's multi-platform, it's highly flexible, and it's free and open source. So this is something which is directionally important to us as we start to look ahead to how we engineer Kubernetes further into our platform and into Lens itself as well. So that's recently also just launched. Go check it out on the project website and on GitHub too. Okay, and somehow I got that in with 10 minutes to go, and I want to make sure I get to answer some more of those questions you may have. Adam, have you been looking at that?
Yeah, absolutely. There was just one more question. They said that infrastructure platform bare metal. What is an example for that?
Is the platform I just was demonstrating bare metal? Is that what's implied, do you think? Or
I think it was. I think it was a question with regard to Container Cloud.
Yes. So okay. So the Container Cloud can be deployed basically anywhere that MKE can be deployed. So we would look at deploying that initially to AWS or on bare metal or on VMware or on OpenStack, and that is just it has the sole function really of running those management services and of running the Container Cloud service, right? That will be making use of providers to talk to other infrastructure. So that could be the same type of infrastructure it's running on. So it could be an OpenStack Container Cloud instance talking to and creating MKE clusters on OpenStack, or it could be creating MKE clusters on AWS and on bare metal. So we use that provider model to interact with different types of infrastructure. So in short, I think the answer is Container Cloud runs anywhere that can run on bare metal, OpenStack, AWS, etc., and it can create infrastructure on those places. And those places can be heterogeneous; they don't have to be the same thing. That's a big sort of a core design and a core achievement for us really in the software, is that we can work across heterogeneous infrastructure. Hope that
That's
answers
fantastic. That. There's just a couple more questions. Can the Container Cloud manage clusters that were deployed by other vendors, Red Hat, Rancher, etc.?
So Container Cloud will not today manage clusters from other vendors today. I just want to emphasize that part. Lens, of course, can manage anything which has a Kubernetes dial tone and has a kube config for it. So you could spin up a GKE cluster and an EKS cluster and an MKE cluster or several MKE clusters and have all of those sitting side by side. Right now, today, we are working in Container Cloud with our own native platform. That's the engineering we need to get done to get to this release. But there's a very aggressive roadmap ahead where we want to expand its usefulness to all of our customers. So stay tuned.
Fantastic. And just a final question here. Is it possible to try the Container Cloud for free?
Container Cloud, yes, as I said, it is free. So you can go to the site, you can test Container Cloud out for free, just use the docs, get started. And then when you want to, of course, sort of expand its use case on board MKE clusters or go beyond a certain level with enterprise support, that's when we become involved as a sort of customer vendor relationship. But by all means, if you want to go and try it out, you're free to go and do that at no charge. But by all means, let us know, and we can help you through some of the design decisions or exploring some of the functionality. We'd love to work with you on that.
Excellent. That's good. Thank you.
Okay, well, if that's it for the questions right now, just want to say a big thank you to everyone who's joined us today and for staying on the line and sharing your time with us. We're going to be doing a lot more of this in the weeks and months to come. So we want to actually double click on a bunch of these areas that we've been discussing, and there'll be much more sort of lower level talks or more things around open source and other projects too. So stay tuned for other stuff from us in our events calendar. And thanks again for joining us today and for all your great questions. Have a great day.
Excellent.